All right, so after thinking about this, I realized the next thing I need to teach you is how we could take boxes and make them circles. Because everything on a web page is a box. Totally true. And you could also take those boxes and round their borders so that they become circles. And so let me show you what that looks like. And we're going to use the border radius property to do that. So here's the border radius property. And you could go to MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, and you can learn about the border radius property, and you could do stuff like this with boxes. You could round their borders with the border radius property and make things like this. So if you didn't have the link right inside this document, if you're just working, you're like, oh, what is that? You could just do MDN border radius, and that'll bring it up. So that's how you find it. All right, so let's take a look at how that's working. And we're also going to learn about how code completion can help you explore and learn when creating web pages and getting familiar with HTML and CSS. So this is the folder and the files we're looking at. And the first one is, let's just like see a single, element or tag in action as a box, and then also with the borders rounded. And so here it is. So the web is made up of boxes, and we can round the corners of those boxes and turn them into circles. or not quite circles with just rounded corners. And so we'll see what that means in a second. But so here to do that, I just have H1 changing the font size, then a div with a width and a height, margin 0 auto, border 2-pic solid, and border radius 50%. Well, a good way to learn HTML and CSS is just to play with this stuff. So why do I need width and height? What would happen if I commented those lines out, right? Those declarations. If I commented those declarations out, what happens? And so to comment them out, I highlighted the lines and then command /, and I'm giving you the WebStorm key shortcuts. So if you're an Atom or Sublime, that's your own fault. And you have to figure out what the keyboard shortcuts are for that. All right, so there's the width and the height. I comment it out and I come over here and whoa, right? So my divs have nothing in them. They are containers with nothing in them, so they just sort of collapse and they don't show anything. So if I set the width and the height, I'm going to uncomment that. Then it'll say, okay, these have a width and a height of 100 pixels wide, 100 pixels high. So that's what that does. Margin 0 auto. What's going to happen when I comment this out and then come over here and hit refresh? So you should answer that this is all going to go to the left. And when I refresh this page, kapow, goes to the left. And what was I going to say? I don't know. Oh, I'm doing the refresh with Command-Shift-R. So Command-Shift-R is refreshing. And you can see when I do that, view is refreshing. And I can look at view and reload this page as Command-R. So it's not showing Command-Shift-R in there, but that's like a hard reload, I've heard. But so Command-Shift-R, somewhere I picked that up, hard reload, meaning it's going to reload it without pulling from cache. Okay, and then I'm using Command-Tab to switch between these two. And you could hold down Command and press Tab, just keep pressing Tab. And it'll show you what's open and you could toggle through it. So I just pass that on in case you're like, what is that magic? How is he switching between things? How is he refreshing things? They're keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so the next thing is we have the border. We already know what border does. And I just want to experiment with this for 1 second. I'm going to hit refresh here, get those back in the center because that's live. But like border 2-pic solid, I could take that line out, right? I'm just going to take this out. And I could do like a control option, control spacebar, sorry. I could do control spacebar on my computer, and it will give me different options, okay? And so this is like, hey, there's different options here that are associated with border. And so this is this deal right here when I'm like, we can learn, explore and learn through code completion. So this is code completion, right? My computer's, and sometimes you have to like back up, hit space to kind of come forward and, and then hit your space bar. And if I didn't have the semicolon there, right, it might not work. In this case it is. But if I had another line under that, it might not work, another declaration under that. Anyhow, let me see if I could show you that not working. We'll just do 2-pic solid black, right? And so here, like if I did this one and then went spacebar, okay, it does work. But sometimes it doesn't. I've experienced in WebStorm. So if it's not working, you try putting the semicolon like this and let's see if it does. All right, so I could experiment with these 2pix groove gold, and there's some keyword colors that you could choose, and you could also just like, hey, do I get color choices there? And so there are some color choices, and I could just start scrolling through them, and you can see a lot of them have keywords, you know. So dark orange, right, is associated with a certain hexadecimal value, and we'll talk about colors in a bit and hexadecimal and all that. So if I change those, check that out. Like if I change my color, boom, kind of interesting. What if I make it like 30? Whoa, that's pretty cool, right? So that's like how you can explore and learn just by experimenting, like coming in here. What happens when I turn this off? What happens when I turn it on? What happens when I turn this off and turn it on? What other options do I have through code completion, right? And then you could just try them. What happens with, I don't know which one we just did, like solid dash dotted. Let's try dotted gold. There we go. Kind of interesting. We got a little bit of a sun down on the bottom one there. But we're just going to stick with 2pix solid black. And you'll notice as I'm typing that, well, for a second it showed it. There we go. That the hexadecimal notation for that color is pound 0.0000000, 6 zeros. There we go. All right, so come back here, refresh, back to that. So we're learning about border radius, but I also just wanted to show you those things about keyboard shortcuts and code completion and how it could help you. So here we're setting border radius, and that's what does the rounding. And you can see here in the HTML, and by the way, when I arrange my screen like this is a good point to sort of pause the video and just be like, okay, let me look at the code and see if I understand what is happening in the code, and then listen to me explain it. You know, hit play after you've sort of looked at it. All right, so the next thing is here we have rounded, right? So both divs, this div here and this div here, they're both having this stuff applied to it, you know. But then this one down at the bottom also has this applied to it. So multiple rule sets could be applied to the same tag, right? So here's the element tag, whatever. Those words, you could use either one. And a lot of people use element. For whatever reason, they just look like tags to me. These are tags, right? Technically speaking, I think that the element is H1 and the tag is this and this. So, all right. So that's the beginning of, you know, border radius. And here this one on the bottom is getting border radius 50%. I think I've killed that topic. I totally talked it into the ground. And we are at 8 minutes. So I'm going to try to go for, in 3 minutes, showing you the rest of these. So here are mini divs, and mini, not M-I-N-I, but M-A-N-Y. M-A-N-Y. You got it right here. Mini divs. All right, so here are mini divs. And these I just applied 50%, 40%, 30%. And if we look at the CSS, we can see that happening. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, 3. And all this other stuff up here, I gave them a little bit of margin. So let's just look at this page. Kapow! And so here they are. This is like 50%. You could go up to 100%, but 50% and 100% I think are exactly the same the way they look. And then here's 3%, 5%, 10%, 20%, so a little bit more round, 30%, 40%, really getting there, 50%, totally circle. What if I didn't want those vertical? I could use a display property called inline block. And a good place to learn about layout, and we're going to be looking here soon, is a website called learnlayout.com. This is the best website in the world for learning about layout. And we're going to be going through this and looking at examples and talking about these concepts here in a minute. But the first one is the display property. So everything on a web page has a default display property. How is it displayed on the web page? How is it displayed? So most things are displayed as blocks, right? Everything is a block or a square, a box on a web page. So block, square, box, right? Interchangeable words. But everything's a block or a square on a web page. So here is like a div, and it's just like a block, and it just fills up left to right the whole web page, and it's tall enough to hold the content that's inside of it, right? And so if we just had a bunch of divs, they would just be stacking on top of each other, right? So div, 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 div. And that's a block level element, right? So the display property of a div by default is a block. And we're going to talk about this again. And for other elements, the display property is inline. So a span has a display property of inline, right? And so here's an inline. So in line with other text, right? This is this span will be wrapping around that text, and it isn't block. It doesn't put it on a line of its own. It's in line with whatever line it appears in, right? The anchor tag is the same way. So if we did an anchor tag, it's just going to wrap right around that. It's not going to create a break and be a line in and of itself, right? So display block is a line in and of itself where that element, whatever's in it, and inline just means, hey, in line with whatever text I'm in, just keep going. And then there's also display none, and then there's display inline block, right? So those are like the four basic ones. So I had these guys here, and they were vertical. I want to make them horizontal, so I could come into my CSS and I could say all of my divs I want to be displayed inline block. Okay, so instead of them being block level elements, I want them to be inline, so they won't occur in their own line anymore. They'll be all in one line. And so when I preview this, kapow, now they are all in one line. That's pretty cool. So we're going to learn, like I said, about inline block and all that stuff more. But what you can do is you can come in here and you can be like, well, what are the different options? And control spacebar, inline block, compact. You know, there's actually quite a lot. But the main ones are inline block, inline, and block, and none. So what would happen if I set this to none? So display none. Bye-bye. Whoa. And what would happen if I set this to inline? Right? Let me make sure I saved it. Kapow! That's totally weird. But that's what it's supposed to. What if it's inline block? Takes that and goes like this. What if it's just block? Oops, I forgot to go over there first. There we go. So same thing. That's its default. So, whoa, let me save that. Save it. There we go. Vertical, right? So that's block. So now inline block is what I want. And that makes it horizontal. Kind of fun. All right. So that's a little bit of a preview of display and things being either block, inline block, or none. Those are like the four. We could also set the border radius, kind of like, you know, the trouble deal, or this would be top and bottom, left and right. And then this would be top, right, bottom, left, trouble, TRBL, top, right, bottom, left. So we could also set each of the corners, how much we want them rounded individually. You can get some interesting effects when you do this. So let's let you like look at that and be like, that's actually kind of cool. You know? So you could start building cool little things that way. And the last thing I'll show you is that there's a circle example here, which I think is pretty cool. And we already saw this at some point, but there are the different circles with different formatting. So you could check out the CSS and the HTML to do that. All right, so that's a little bit about code completion and how you could use it to explore and learn, and then also the border radius property in CSS.